setting up a creative business. And then we move into our next stage, which I'll tell you about at the end. So today we're going to be touching in, and I say touching in because it's such a huge topic, but we're going to be touching in on protecting your creative work, so intellectual property essentials. Oops, sorry. So you can see we're coming to the end here, and then in a couple of weeks we start our next session. So as you all know, if you're not new here, our sessions are based off the Nesta Creative Enterprise Toolkit, which is fantastic because it's set up specifically for creative. So all the kind of language resources, case studies, examples, it's all sort of focused within the creative industries. So it's really helpful and easy to be able to understand. And it's sort of broken up into key sections. So we base these sessions off that kind of toolkit. And you can download it, but we also give you specific resources as well that we've already downloaded for you. So the last of this series is setting up a creative business. So today we're going to be looking at protecting your creative work, intellectual sort of property essentials, and ensuring your ideas and creations stay yours. So we'll look at identifying, protecting, and maximizing copyright and intellectual property, ensuring your ideas and creations stay yours, understanding the different types of IP, recognizing common IP risks and how to avoid them, and build IP considerations into your business plan. Now, there's a lot there, and IP is a huge area. You have lawyers that specialize in it. So what we're doing today is we're literally just touching in on some of the kind of key elements and making you sort of giving you a bit of some signposting and starting points to think, okay, where does it affect me? It will affect all of you if you're thinking of running a business in some capacity. Might be a sort of quite lightweight for others. It might form a core part of your business and your business model. So it really depends. So we're touching on it on different aspects today. So the most common types of protection for certain types of activities are patents and design rights. We will talk about those in a bit more detail. And that could refer to sort of technical solutions, new innovations and products, for example. Copyright, and that is used for sort of artistic, dramatic and musical works and literary, trademarks, that may be something that you might do as well. If you have a brand and you've created it, so for brand names, words, sounds, and even very rarely smells. And then a common comms, so to make your IP accessible under certain conditions. So these are some of the overviews of how IP, some of the kind of key terms or things that you might want to start to develop a knowledge and awareness of. Most brands will have their own designs, whether that's just packaging, logos, etc. And it could go through to more sort of extensive parts of the business and how it runs. So in a nutshell, all of your sort of mental and creative outputs can be transformed into tangible commodities so that they can be licensed. They can sell, trade, divide or retain your rights to those kind of elements of your business or design commodities. So it's really important to consider that. We do have a kind of checklist at the end that I will send you, and that can help you sort of go through, okay, what are the things that I need to think about and consider for me and my business? We have a lot of resources available that I'm going to talk through at the end of this session. But it's important to think, where does that affect me? Because it can be quite complex and you might need to seek some kind of additional support and start to develop an understanding and knowledge of it for yourself. The British Library has really extensive information. They run some really fantastic workshops that you can attend online or in person, and they're free. I really recommend that. So I give you the information on that later on. So let's have a look. What is IP? So IP is not an idea. It's when the idea has been expressed. So I'm just going to read this sort of paragraph because it explains it quite well. If you've spotted an opportunity or thought of an idea, you need to think about intellectual property. Music, books, computer software, products we use in our daily lives. Each is a product of human creativity, and that creativity is protected. It is creations of the mind, once expressed, that make up intellectual property. IP. So that's a key thing here. It's not just the idea, but it's how you have expressed it. So the crucial word here is expressed. There's no IP protection in the UK for an idea or a concept, only for expressions of those ideas or concepts. And they do vary from country to country. And it's worth, if you're kind of going to set up your business in another country, finding out what that is and what you might need help or what you need to cover in those particular countries. Lucy, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, I just
Cover
wanted to add
these.
something as well. There's different IP, and we will touch on this later on. If you are a photographer or an illustrator or a fine artist, there are different, you retain the rights to the images. So, for example, if you're a painter and you sell somebody a painting, what you do is when you sell them it, you have a deed on the document and it's a provenance. It says that you made it, when you made it, what it's made from, and all that kind of thing. It says it's a real art piece of artwork. But also, you should have a certificate saying that you retain the right to the image of that painting. That means if you become very famous and say a gallery wants to put the image of your painting onto tea towels and ceramics and onto posters for people to buy, you would get money each time one of those is made. If you haven't done that, the person who owns the artwork would own the image of it. In photography, most photographers retain all rights to their images, and what they're doing is selling the usage. So, for example, a photographer might do a fashion shoot, and the negotiation will be that you can use these fashion images on the website and on social media, but not in advertising. If the company then took those images and used them for advertising, which pays a lot more money, the photographer would have the right to say you've got to take them down or you've got to pay me the amount that I charge for advertising. And the same thing happens with illustration as well. So you need to be aware of what you're selling. Occasionally people say, oh yeah, you've got the rights to everything of these images, but once you get more established, you don't want to be doing that. And particularly, I would say photography, illustration artwork, I would always suggest retaining the right to the image, because you might think, oh, I've just done this sketch, it's not a big deal, but you might become really, really famous. So, think about how that works. So managing your IP and unlocking value. So you're thinking about, what is my intellectual property relating to my business? This is going to be different for different people depending on what you're doing. It might just be your logo and your company brand name. It might be packaging. It might be your, you know, the data, the things that you make, so photography, illustration, that kind of thing. If it's a product that you're selling, it's hard to kind of, unless you pay a lot of money and it's very new and you get a patent, it's quite hard to stop someone making something similar, but you need to think how about you do it. So you can have a confidentiality agreement used with clients, manufacturers, investors before you start negotiations. This is what usually happens. If you're selling things that are images, it's usually in your contract how it's going to be used, and you make sure it happens beforehand. If you're going to get something manufactured, you can easily, find a contract online which says how to do it, because you want to have it in agreement that, say you're making really amazing ceramic mugs and you make them by hand, and then you find that people really, really want them, lots of people are buying them. So you think, okay, I'm going to negotiate with a factory in the UK who can produce ceramics more quickly, and they've got machinery. You need to make sure that they are making them for you, but they don't retain the right to that mug, to the shape of that mug, or what it looks like, or what colours it is. That's really important, particularly when products become really, really popular. And it's also helpful if things get copied. So I'm sure you've all heard of Keith Brimner-Jones, who is on Great Pottery Throwdown, and he does the white pottery with the small kind of little stamped letters into it. And he actually did take people to court because they were copying his ceramics, and he was able to sue them because he had it copyrighted, was able to say, no, you can't produce mugs that look like mine with the same colour writing and the same ceramic glaze and things like that. You need to keep records of this. You need to kind of mark the author or the publisher or the creator's name on copies of your work. And this is the kind of thing that you do with a provenance document in fine art as well. And put design rights and IP. As Elaine said, the British Library, strangely enough, has so much resource for this. It's really, really clear. It's not confusing. You could put together what your business is about and then look on there and say, what could I trademark, or what's my intellectual property for my particular business? So don't get overwhelmed today thinking, oh, this seems a lot of stuff. It's going to be very specific depending on what you do, and you actually only need to find out how it relates to your specific business. So don't worry too much. Thanks, Elaine.
Yeah, and also, you know, if you are in a situation where this is coming up and you're worried about it, it's something you can come and have a session with myself or
Yeah,
Lucy, and we can give you some
yeah.
advice on it. Because it is a big topic and we
Mm.
can't cover it all in
Yeah,
half an
yeah.
hour, unfortunately. And also, you know, there may be things, for example, like, you know, royalties. So again, you know, you'll need a contract for that. You'll need to negotiate what those royalties might be. So if someone's selling your work on your behalf, for example, you
Mm.
might take a cut and that's your royalties. And different companies will offer different sort of percentages. And you need to think what is a fair term for you, and how, whether or not that, you know, sort of is enough, in terms of reward for, you know, your work, to be able to give you, you know, essentially bring in enough money, and make sure that that's a good contract that works for you. Again, they're things that potentially, you know, we can certainly help the beginnings of that.
Yeah,
We're not IP experts, but we can
yeah.
point you in the right direction.
Yeah, I would also say IP is very dependent on who your audience is, who your customer is, and that kind of thing. Because even though I mentioned in photography, let's say you're a wedding photographer, you probably, unless you're photographing, if you're photographing really wealthy people, they will want the full rights to the imagery and will pay you for it. If you're photographing weddings and it's normal day-to-day people, the likelihood is that you don't need to retain those images because they wouldn't necessarily be useful. You might say, do you mind, can I use them in my advertising? I'm going to retain use for that. So it completely depends on the context of the business, and we can help you with that and how it would work.
Yeah. So just to give you sort of an overview of some of the things that may relate to you as well. And we're talking about, you know, not just that idea, but when it's sort of been physically expressed, you know, how that can be protected by law. So we've got copyright, which is a type of property covering creative works. I'll give you some examples in a moment. We've got the design rights, is a type of intellectual property. It applies to the shape and configuration of a design. And then trademarks, which I think is kind of quite self-explanatory, and we can have a look at some examples. So copyright, protects the expression of creativity by the artist. Remember that you automatically have, the copyright to your sort of designs or your creations. It's automatic, but sort of, it's not necessarily some. So you automatically have the rights to it, when you produce and you create something. So copyright is automatic but unregisterable IP, right in the UK, and protects the owner or creator of the original work, which must demonstrate some skill, labor, or judgment in the creation. And it usually lasts for about 70 years, from sort of its origin and when it's created. So for example, if you're producing works, if it is a painting or particular design, you want to consider about how you, might trace that. How did you come up with it? You know, so you want to put dates on things. You want to perhaps keep copies of those original design ideas. And we'll give you some examples at the end of companies that can give you some guidance and advice on that, depending on the kind of area that you're working in. Design rights, for example, that protects any aspect of a shape or configuration of a design. So that can last up to 25 years from when you've actually produced it. 15 years automatic from the actual creation, 25 years when you've registered it. So again, it really depends on, you know, whether that's something you feel you want to register. It's got a uniqueness to it. It's a core part of your brand. Perhaps it's a particular technique you've developed, or, a particular kind of construction of how you've put something together, if it's clothing, textiles, etc. So it kind of really depends whether that's, viable for you, and it's something that, you know, you kind of want to, develop more knowledge or understanding of. And then obviously trademarks is kind of much more obvious. We all know trademarks. We see them in all the kind of brands that we tend to use. And you can protect, a brand if you want to. A trademark can protect your brand, designer, company identity. Creating a trademark does not automatically protect, your brand, but you must register the trademark. So brands distinguish the goods or services of one of your businesses from another, and can be for things like words, slogans, logos, shapes, colors, etc. So there's lots of different examples of brands, and there's lots of different kind of classes or classifications available. And again, if you think it's worth doing, then that's something that you can look into. A patent is much more complicated, and it isn't always, you actually have to meet a requirement to have something patented. A patent is granted for an invention. So usually a concept or coming up with a solution to a problem. A patent gives the inventor the power to stop others from making, using, or selling the invention without permission. It must be new and involve an inventive step and must never have been published before the patent is filed. It must be capable of an industrial process or method of operation. So a patent is a bit more complicated than perhaps something like, registering a trademark. It has a kind of set of criteria that's required from it. It can be quite a long kind of process. But again, if that's something you think I might need, you could speak to us initially and we can certainly point you in the right direction of how to try and find out a little bit more about it. But it does have a certain set of criteria to it.
I think it's more likely that you're going to be involved in patents if you're doing industrial design or product design or possibly architecture, or possibly maybe jewelry, something where you're making something that didn't exist before and you design that thing. It's not common for most small businesses. There is a cost to registering a trademark. Yes, I believe there is, Dustin. Yeah.
So we're going to jump into, we'll be able to give you lots of resources so you can look that up. We're going to give you just some sort of basic information and things you can think about now, and then we'll give you some resources of where you can go and learn a little bit more. So, from the outset, it's important to ensure any of your ideas are kept confidential. So be careful who you share ideas with until they're expressed. They're not protected by copyright, as we said before. So if you've got a really great idea for a business, you might want to start to put it down onto paper and start to actually formalize it a little bit more as a business, particularly if you think it's got something that could have something unique or original about it. So it could be, so this design is protected by copyright. So this symbol here is something that you could even put on your work. You could put it onto your, your website, onto certain aspects of your work. And it does give you some kind of protection in terms of saying, this is protected by copyright. And it also just can help to act as a deterrent for people as well. So there are some sort of simple methods you can use that can help sort of put people off from perhaps using your work in a way without actually paying you for it or copying it. So it's provided to you in confidence, and you are not at liberty to disclose the design to a third party. Any infringement of the designer's copyright or rights will be pursued. So it's kind of a statement, and it is a symbol that you can use to help sort of protect your work.
You would usually have that somewhere on your website or on contracts. One of the things that's been happening recently is companies like Shine and Temu have, enormous companies that manufacture all the time and always making new products, have been directly copying small makers' work. They might see, I'm thinking about the jumpers, for example, that were in the Traitors that are made by someone who's an alumni of UCA. And in those situations, copyright can't stop someone copying your work, and quite often very, very large companies will copy very small companies' work because they're thinking they won't take me to court, they won't do anything about it. But there are organisations that can support you in that way. But having it on your website somewhere and having it on contracts, having it visible, would at least give you a bit of leverage that you said, actually, it was on my Instagram, it was on my website, that I am copyrighted. If you didn't have it, you wouldn't be able to take that to court. You wouldn't be able to do anything, unfortunately. So it is, as Elaine was saying, protected, but it can happen, and it does happen.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. Yeah.
It does, yeah.
Yeah.
And commissions, it might be something that you're working on and you get commission-based work. And again, this is about putting in place a contract, a commissions agreement where you're laying out your terms, including retaining the copyright. If you're supplying kind of images or designs. So it's really important, whatever it is that you're doing, that you think, okay, is there an element of IP that I need to consider in this process, especially when you're working with somebody and you're kind of providing work designs, etc. for them. So keeping a photographic sort of catalogue, even those initial drawings, perhaps, meetings or kind of design ideas that you've come up with originally. It's really good to keep a kind of paper trail of that or digital trail, because that helps if these situations do arrive, you are able to then have something as a backup to be able to have a dated history to things. Because if you were to enter into an agreement, say with a manufacturer, and you did find that they do decide to copy your designs, some large manufacturers like clothing or product design manufacturers, I know this because I worked in this industry myself. They sometimes also don't just manufacture, but they will have small design teams themselves. So they will then sell direct to, say, retailers in the UK. They may, if you don't have proper sort of agreements in place, they could take, I think as Lucy kind of mentioned before, they could take your designs and sort of copy them and then sell them sort of directly to a retailer as their own designs. So it is important, if you keep a record, it's easier to say, actually, we saw this design, you saw this design, 2 years previously when we had this conversation. So over email or whatever it might be. So tracking and keeping records is really important.
I think it's also important to realise, particularly if you're freelance, that there may be some situations, say you are doing graphic design and packaging ideas and you're going into someone else's office and you're designing as part of their design team and they're paying you freelance. In that situation, it's very likely that the contract you have with them is that the copyright remains the right of the company. And the same thing can happen if you're doing fashion design, you're going in, maybe you'll say, let's say you're working for Adidas and you're doing sportswear in their offices. They would, again, the contract that you'd have with them about how much you're paid would mean that any designs you do within that team retain the right, they belong to the company, not to you. So it's just about being kind of clear about how this works, is what I'd say. Yeah.
Yeah. So we've got some really good resources here that can be just helpful for you to perhaps make a note of. And, if you want to learn a little bit more about them, you can have a look at their websites. So ACID is anti-copying in design, and they are really helpful in terms of sort of helping designers understand a little bit more about design and intellectual property rights. I've used them before. Companies I know, particularly working in things like product design, fashion, textiles, etc. They're really great for that, and they have different kind of resources that you can just have a look at for free, and you can also become a member. I think they have a student membership as well, and they run a lot of campaigns as well. They have lawyers specialize in IP that work for them as well, so they're really good kind of resource for you if you're in that kind of field and you kind of want to learn a little bit more or think think about it, may be something that's helpful for the future for me as well. Crafts Council, they have some great resources around sort of how to protect your designs and the copyright for your craft business. And again, we're giving you a range of resources because everyone on the call will have all sorts of different, how IP will affect you in all sorts of different ways. So the Crafts Council is great if you're a maker or you're sort of a small craft business. Do you want to talk about this, Lucy?
Yeah. I'm just aware we need to leave a bit of time for questions. We've got quite a lot of questions.
Fine.
So ArtsQuest is a really amazing site, and if you are doing fine art and you're taught by me. You'll know about this because I talk about it a lot. It's really, really useful. If you're doing Fine Art on another campus, please look it up. It's an amazing site. Essentially, it's almost like Google for artists. Anything that you could Google anything that's really helpful on there, they search it. They've got some really, really useful advice about copyright. They've also got information about how to put a certificate of provenance onto something and when you can use it, how you get used to you, and also how you get permission if you're wanting to use other people's copyrighted material in your product or in an artwork, right? So it's really got some great explanations of what to do. It's very, very clear, and it gives you, very good advice about what to do. The Association of Photographers is also really good. As I said before, usually all photographers retain the rights to an image. There are exceptions in that. Situations, for example, the photographer who photographed Elton John and David Furnish's wedding was paid millions of pounds. The reason that they were paid millions of pounds is they signed over the rights to Elton John and David Furnish because they didn't want to have any of those photos published anywhere else. That's unusual. Usually, most working photographers retain the rights to their images. And what's happening if you're freelance is that the person is paying you to use those images in a particular way. In the business, it's called above and below the line. So below the line is things like websites and Instagram and social media and things like that. And above the line is advertising. Advertising has always had to be paid a premium for imagery, and the Association of Photographers maintains that. And it's really important, particularly if you're starting out as a photographer, to not undermine this actually, because you can undermine the whole kind of nature of the business. And also make sure that you never just kind of hand over raw files to anybody. You're kind of aware of your rights, and they've got lots of information about this. They've got a usage calculator. It's really, really important. Creative Lives in Progress, which is also a great site, has a really good information in one of their guides about what is copyright and how to understand licensing. So it's really useful as well. And this is also a really useful site. DACS, Artist Resale Right, has got more information about it as well and how it works. And gov.co.uk has also got information about copyright. This is more general, and some of the other sites are more specific to your discipline, but this is really useful as well.
And this is the British Library.
British Library Business and IP Centre.
Yeah. I never thought the British Library would necessarily have anything related to this, but I'm always amazed that they have some fantastic stuff. And one of the people that's worked with us previously on running these sessions teaches a lot of the sessions for free there, and he's really great and very accessible, so do check it out. We do have resources on our Creative Careers platform as well that go into a little bit more detail around specific websites and things like that you might need, and we are wrapping up now. We've managed to make it on time this time, but if you do have any questions, pop them in the chat. We'll have a couple of minutes to answer them. We've got a break for a week, and then we start again on our second set of 3 sessions, and that's Making Your Business Work 1, and that's focusing on customers, and that will run again on a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and 3 sessions around making your business work. I won't go into these because we're a bit short on time, but we do have our competition, and we will go into more details of that in our next few sessions, as we have done before. We have a competition, and it's basically just about creating a great business idea. If you listen to all these sessions, they help support you with that, and that's at the end of May, beginning of June. Lucy, is there anything else you want to add in?
No, if you want to book onto the next 3 sessions, that's the QR code, but also you can find them where you book these. They are the ones that are called Making Your Business Work, Making Business Work 1, 2, and 3. And like before, there'll be a Tuesday, a Wednesday, a Thursday. I'm just going to answer some of the questions, I think, now, Elaine.
Yeah, that's
Ruby's
great.
asked, how do you get the copyright symbol? I don't actually know, but I'm imagining if you go onto the British Library, there's probably downloadable copyright symbols that you can use. Yeah, I'm imagining. Distin said, is there a cost to registering a trademark? And I did type in the chat and I said, I believe that there is a cost to registering a trademark. Yvonne, when we're talking about Instagram, we're talking about copywriting. People don't usually put copyright all over their Instagram images. If you want to do it, I would suggest maybe putting it in your bio and then maybe putting it on your website and have it on your website very clearly, you know, in one section. Does that make sense? Don't you think, Elaine?
Yeah.
Yeah, but again, there'll be
Yeah.
advice on these resources about where to do it. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, you don't usually have it on Instagram all over stuff. Somebody said I might need a little bit more information about this because it seems quite specific. Can we upload the sketches that we designed for other brands, saying we've designed for ABC brands? Lipsheet, do you want to put your sound on and kind of explain that a bit more?
I think I know what they mean. I think they just mean that if they've designed something for another brand and they've done that kind of initial research and design development, can they use that in order to kind of
No,
promote their services? I think that's what they're saying.
I
So
don't
if
think
you
so.
really,
Yeah, even if you put work that you've done for another brand and you
oh
were
no,
paid
sorry,
to,
I thought you meant I misinterpreted what she was saying. So
no,
yeah,
I'm
you're
not.
right. You
Yeah,
can't.
yeah.
Yeah, you
Lipsita, can you
can't.
expand what you mean? What do you mean? Can you put your sound on and speak? No, okay. If you've designed things, so for example, if you've done a live project at university, you are allowed to put that work into a portfolio, okay? But you wouldn't be able to sell that work as your own. If you have worked for somebody else and you have done maybe an internship with them, or you've done work experience with them, or you're an architect and you've done a part one work experience, you can only put images into your portfolio that they say that you can. So, you know, sometimes designs aren't released. Like my husband, for example, is a photographer, a car photographer. He's not allowed to put images of car photography onto his social media until it's come out in the advertising.
Yeah, so
So there's things like that that go on.
this all
Yeah,
comes down again to a
context.
licensing agreement and things like that. Sometimes when you
Yeah,
do a work placement, you have to sign an IP
yes,
disclaim an
yeah,
NDA.
yeah,
So this all comes down to licensing and what a contract and agreement, things
yeah.
like that. They're good questions though.
Yeah, I hope that's clarified that. Yeah, you couldn't just put on a load of sketches that you've done for Marks and Spencer's onto your website and say Marks and
Because they've
Spencer's
paid
fashion
you to do
designer
that.
because they've
Yeah.
paid for that. You'd have to have generic sketches, if that makes sense. Can you get this PowerPoint? Yes, we will send them to people
We're
after this
sending them
event.
all out on Friday
Yeah, we're
with
sending them
all
all
the
on Friday.
resources, with all the worksheets as well. So you'll get all of them on
Um,
Friday.
if I need to use external sources for images, i.e. mood images to build up my work, are there any royalty-free sources I'm able to use? Pinterest is my usual go-to. I think it depends what it is you're doing, Rebecca. If you're doing mood images and maybe you show them to clients, but they're not on your website or they're generic, that would be okay. Depends what you're doing. Oh, Distance put some stuff in for on Max, which is very
Right.
helpful. So if I wanted to sell any of my final year projects, yeah, you can sell them. You can sell your
Yeah,
final year projects. Yeah. You
yeah,
just
that's
need to think
fine.
about what it is you do. Yeah.
That's absolutely fine.
Depends what
So
you do, Ruby,
yeah,
is what I would
um,
say.
I'm going to
Yeah.
have to go now, unfortunately,
Me too, because I'm
Lucy.
teaching.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ruby, it
So really
depends what,
sorry, everyone. It's so
yeah.
short.
Yeah. Ruby, what discipline are you in? Just really quickly. What do you do? Because I've done that
So
all.
I did fashion textiles, but for my final year project, I made upcycled furniture and fabric designs as well.
Yeah, you can sell that. Why would you not be able to
Okay.
sell it?
I just because you said that if I had made live projects in university, then
No, when I say it's a
oh,
live project, say M&S had said, can you design
okay,
some recycled furniture for
yeah,
M&S? Yeah, you wouldn't have been able to sell that. But this
okay,
is your own design,
yeah,
so you can sell it. Yeah.
okay, cool.
Does that
Thank
make
you.
sense?
Yeah, it
When I
makes
mean a
perfect
live
sense.
project, I mean set
Yeah.
by another company, set by another
Oh, okay,
brand. Yeah,
yeah.
that's what I meant.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. All
Thank
right.
you.
No,
Yeah,
you're
thanks.
welcome. Okay. Thanks, everyone. I know it's
Okay, thank you.
complex. I'm going to stop recording now,
Yeah.
because we've both got to go and
It is a
teach.
massive topic, but we can answer